So in case any of you have forgotten since this morning, I'm Joe MacDougald. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Energy and Environmental Law here. And I want to take a moment to talk about the center itself and the programs that we have going on at the University of Connecticut. I couldn't possibly let a captive audience like this go without describing, my own center and our own efforts. So as we get ready to proceed with our program, I want to take a few minutes to talk about some of the things we've been up to. The University of Connecticut School of Law has recently consolidated energy and environmental law to start talking about them together as in one legal center, as one program. I don't think anyone in Connecticut can seriously doubt there's a connection between energy and environmental law, not particularly after what we've seen over the last several months. I don't know if there's anyone who believes that that a storm won't impact, or climate won't impact the power structure of the state, but we address a lot of other problems. Is a wind farm in Cape Cod a unique energy resource, or is it an environmental problem? Is it changing power portfolio and how we buy and how we purchase our power? Is it purely a climate basis, or are we doing damage to our core energy infrastructure, how we influence our purchases? So our center, affectionately called SEAL, actually sort of a difficult acronym, has over these last several months sought to consolidate the academic areas of legal education. I want to tell you a few things that we've done recently. In the last several months, we hosted an event somewhat like this, where we brought in a federal energy regulatory commissioner. She came to speak to our students and to the energy community. At the time, she told us something interesting. As we were walking away, she made it a point to say, I didn't know that Hartford was the center of energy law. And frankly, I thought she was just being polite, to be honest. And she said, no, it's really quite true, because of the number of firms that support the combined energy purchasing and industry groups, David and the other firms around it, that really the energy legal community in Hartford was incredibly significant. We held a career panel bringing in environmental and energy professionals, where we got a very large turnout of students who were interested in going into this area. Within the first couple of weeks of the fall term, we held class on the White House grounds in the Eisenhower Executive Office building. It was a chance to actually deal with a federal branch that people don't talk about much, OIRA, part of the Office of Management and Budget. And Cass Sunstein's assistant administrator was the person who led us there. Also gave an opportunity for students to sort of get their picture by the Situation Room. That was kind of fun, but the real issue was the other part. We toured solar plants in western Massachusetts. They took a 12-acre brownfield and have created a 2.2 megawatt solar site. And it's good for us to bring our students to actually see what that means in physical terms. What was sort of interesting on that particular tour was that the project manager turned in from being, when asked, what makes this pay? Instead of talking about efficiencies, suddenly we were treated to an entire bevy of the portfolio of incentives that came from both state and federal incentives for alternative power. Just recently, the center has announced its new certificate program. The law school will be putting out, hopefully, about a dozen graduates immediately, but over time, for students to get a certificate in energy and environmental law. It's a way that our graduates can both channel their legal education but distinguish themselves in the job market. We've sponsored several publications on renewable power as well as energy infrastructure. We have an ongoing course. We're one of the earlier law schools to begin a course on climate law. So we would gather all the various legal principles together into one academic course, and it remains, I think, one of our popular courses in the environmental curriculum. And there's certainly more to come. They're looking on April 13th of this year. We're hoping to put on a conference combining insurance law and climate. So the idea of combining the center, it seems obvious in retrospect, but few schools had done it, and almost none had done it at the time that we did it. The idea comes from our dean, Jeremy Paul. Jeremy recognized that it was becoming increasingly difficult and also illogical to discuss the disciplines separately. And he's the one who created the combined positioning of the center, something I think that gives a lot of energy to it, and frankly, it doesn't matter what context I travel, people are inherently engaged in finding out what we're doing in this combined space. Dean Paul is a graduate of Princeton University. He has received his law degree from Hartford. In addition to his teaching career, he has served as a law clerk for the Honorable Judge Irving Coffin of the U.S. Court of Appeals in the Second Circuit, and was a professor in residence at the appellate staff of the Civil Division of the U.S. Department of Justice. Aside from teaching here for some, I believe, 22 years, is that right? He has taught as a professor at Boston College and the University of Miami. He is the author of the widely read Getting to Maybe, sort of a required reading of all law schools as to how to take and excel at law school exams. Dean Paul is the Dean and the Thomas F. Gallivan Jr. Professor of Real Property Law. So please join me in welcoming Dean Paul. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Joe, and welcome everyone to our law school for this exciting conference. I'm not entirely sure just who is the original dreamer behind the Center for Energy and Environmental Law, but on the theory that success has 1,000 parents, I'm proud to join you today on this splendid occasion to congratulate Joe MacDougald and Siva Eben, among many others, on a job well done. By every measure, this wonderful conference here today is a success along each path that I hoped we could travel by devoting resources to a combined study of energy and environmental law. The future of universities depends upon successful collaborations across disciplines, and we are very proud to be working so closely today with Dr. Siva Eben and Dr. Greaves from the Connecticut Sea Grant. We hope this is the first of many collaborations, both with them and with many other parts of our university, which has so many scientific and social science resources devoted to energy and environmental study. I was also thrilled to hear Tony MacDonald this morning make the point in his keynote address that captured for me the spark of why a multidisciplinary approach to our nation's energy and environmental challenges is so important. As he put it, top-notch engineers can often design solutions to almost any technical problem, but it doesn't do a landowner any good to have an engineered solution if he or she can't get a permit to get it done. Far too often our scientific and policy community are out of step with each other, and my hope is that our Center for Energy and Environmental Law can help traverse the gaps. The third reason why I think this is such an important area is because I think it's a growth area for our graduates and for students. One of the things that surprised me most when I went out just after becoming dean to meet many graduates is how many people are working in this field, and I can see by the audience today that there are going to be more all the time. So I think that this is a good thing for the law school to be doing. I'm also extremely impressed with the intellectual creativity of this topic. I think that the idea of focusing on adaptation as opposed to, I guess, what you all call mitigation is just stunning. I was telling Joe earlier that imagine if during the period when the country was fighting with the tobacco companies, something that our distinguished luncheon speaker knows a lot about, instead of only focusing on whether or not cigarettes cause cancer, people had said, we need to spend millions and billions of dollars on new hospitals just in case, right? Maybe that would have caused people to think, well, gee, maybe even if it's not really such a clear link, we ought to do it. So I think not only is adaptation an important topic in its own right, I predict it will actually be a wedge into the more difficult topic or equally difficult topic of mitigation. Finally, the most important aspect of being a dean is to find great people and just get out of the way. And I'm personally grateful to both Joe MacDougald and Sarah Bronin for all their work on this event. And I'm proud to have them at the law school, and I look forward to many more such events. All right, now I'm really going to get out of the way, and I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, Senator Richard Blumenthal. It might be said that for someone as distinguished and well known as a senator, I can just say, well, look, after you've been a senator, who cares what you did before? But in the case of our particular senator, that would be highly unfair because he's been fighting hard on behalf of the citizens of Connecticut for many, many years. I think if you Googled the phrase distinguished career, you would find a picture of Senator Blumenthal come up on your screen. He's a graduate of Harvard College, both Phi Beta Kappa and Magna Cum Laude, and Yale Law School, where he was editor-in-chief. He's been an administrative assistant to Senator Ribicoff, also Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a law clerk to Justice Blackmun. He was U.S. Attorney from 1977 to 1981. He served in the Connecticut House of Representatives, the Connecticut State Senate. But of course, we know him best for his 5 unprecedented terms as our state's Attorney General. The last time he was kind enough to speak on our campus, he said that his daughter described him as the eternal general. But fortunately now he has gone on to the Senate, and we're very proud of him. He's been a strong consumer advocate on a whole variety of issues, including big tobacco that I mentioned earlier. I know everyone read the newspapers this morning announcing the $26 billion deal that the states reached with several of the banks as a result of the robo-signing instead of debacle. And Senator Blumenthal, when he served as Attorney General, was very instrumental in launching that investigation. He's also been a strong champion of the environment. As Attorney General, he led a group of 9 state attorneys, state attorney generals in a lawsuit against the Bush White House for its attempts to weaken the Clean Air Act. And also he's been a longtime champion of Long Island Sound and worked to block the floating natural gas plant in the middle of the Sound that was attempted to be launched by Broadwater. So really, we're all just very grateful to have Senator Blumenthal here with us today, and we really appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Paul, for that wonderful introduction, and thank you to Joe MacDougald for the great work that you're doing at the center, and to Sarah Bronin for not only the intellectual but the management expertise that you bring to this role. And thank you all for being here on a subject that is of supreme importance to our nation, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to be with you. You know, just so you're under no illusions, among 100 United States senators in seniority, I am number 97. I'm glad you're laughing. Really, any day I get a chance to say something is a good day for me. And at a time when I think the approval rating for Congress has sunk to something like 10%, you know, getting out is always a welcome opportunity. One of my colleagues was asked about that poll showing 10% approval rating, and he said, I want to meet the 10%, where are they? So I come here with a great deal of humility about the level of approval or respect for what Congress can do about some of the issues that you've been discussing today, but I think it is actually a very exciting and important time for our national government, but even more so for what you reflect and represent, which is citizen activists, academics, leaders in your communities who can do something to shape and frame public opinion, and essentially to frame the public debate. And if I have one sort of observation that has come to me during the year, and it's not much more than a year that I've been in Washington, away from Connecticut, it is that so many of these issues depend on who is framing the debate, who is asking the question, and how it is framed. So you know, and I know, that energy and environment, far from being incompatible or in conflict or inconsistent, actually should be and are complementary in their goals. The idea that pipelines, energy, affordable access to fuel is somehow incompatible with the environment, absurd. And yet, so much of the American public continues to believe it. So framing the debate the right way in terms of clean energy, which the vast majority of the American public want, informing them that it actually leads to jobs and employment, and Connecticut is a great example of it, is very important. Connecticut's a great example because we are a fuel cell capital of the United States. We could be the fuel cell capital of the world if we adopt sound public policy that encourages and rewards the right kind of conduct. There are lessons to me from my time as Attorney General about the importance of citizen activism. We defeated, while I was Attorney General, some of the most egregious infringements on Long Island Sound. Broadwater, which would have been a huge floating natural gas factory, 4 football fields long, 10 stories high, out in the middle of Long Island Sound, and a terrible danger to public safety, as well as to the environment, an aesthetic monstrosity, a navigation nightmare, and yet it came close to being built before we defeated it, and might have been built without the activism of citizens who literally rose up, overwhelming. And more than the law was on our side, but more important than any statutory protection, made their views known. And that's the reason that we won that battle. Citizen activism, I think, has even more opportunities, exciting and profoundly important opportunities. What have we learned from the two of the most important publicly played out debates of the last couple of weeks? Protect intellectual property, protect IP, the outpouring of opposition. I recognize that among environmentalists, perhaps you are not as familiar with SOPA and PIPA, but trust me when I say to you that the laws that drew that opposition spontaneously, for the most part, from people interested in and opposed to those laws because of the threats they represented to innovation and creativity in the internet, the architecture of the internet, had a profoundly important immediate effect. And then, of course, the overwhelming and outpouring opposition to the decision by the Susan Komen for the Cure Foundation to ban grants to Planned Parenthood. Again, maybe outside your lanes, as they say, but I'm sure that you know as well as I how important, again, citizen activism was in that debate. And the means to express it, I think, are more available than ever before. I won't go through each of those examples, but I think they offer a teaching moment for activists, regardless of the cause, that when a nerve is struck, citizen activists can overcome some of the most deeply entrenched and powerful interests. And in each of those cases, very important interests, wealthy, powerful interests on the other side that were overcome. So I think public and citizen involvement in framing the debate and shaping public opinion is more important than ever before. And so too is the understanding that we can have economic development, job creation, growth in this country by adopting sound environmental policy. Fuel cells are a good example. You know, Connecticut has major fuel cell manufacturers. The renewable energy tax credit, which has been allowed to expire, which even when it existed was only for 1 year. Companies can't plan for 1 year. It needs to be made permanent. An example of how government can facilitate. It can't pick winners, as the saying goes, but it can facilitate. And again, every poll that I've seen shows that people want the government to provide tools and remove obstacles. They don't want the government to invest or pick winners. They want the government at all levels to facilitate, to provide tools and remove obstacles. And we can do it not only by that kind of tax credit, but also fighting for an energy policy, which we sadly and very much have lacked in this country. And it's another reason why the Chinese are stealing a lot of that intellectual property, whether it's fuel cells or solar or wind, and producing these kinds of mechanisms in their own country and out-competing us. I think in some ways the Long Island Sound is a microcosm for what we need to do. There are ways to have energy delivered more efficiently to make it accessible to Long Island, which was the objective of those two, of the project that I mentioned earlier, Broadwater, also of another project, Islander East, which would have been a pipeline under the Sound through the Thimble Islands. One of the most protected areas, which we fought, and again, with citizen involvement, won. And our argument in both instances was there are better alternatives. Not that we don't need natural gas in Long Island Sound, a cleaner source of fuel than many of the alternatives. Not that we don't need electricity delivered to Long Island Sound, but there are better alternatives. There are better routes to deliver natural gas without going across the Sound and building a new pipeline in a new route. There are existing cables for delivery of electricity. Why not follow those routes? Those arguments eventually, I think, helped us prevail. Not that we were against cleaner energy, but that there were better ways to do it. And that is really also the law. The least damaging alternative is the one that should be chosen. The least or less damaging alternatives need to be considered as part of an environmental impact statement. That really is the approach consistent with our law. So I have a modest proposal, which I've made before about Long Island Sound, that we designated a marine protected area under the National Marine Sanctuaries Act. There is the power of the federal government to designate certain areas as marine protected areas. It's been done elsewhere in the country. First, it was done at the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary and Underwater Preserve. Thunderwater National Marine Sanctuary and Underwater Preserve off the coast of Michigan, Lake Huron, 448 acres of protected bed. We're talking about the bed, the bottom of the Sound, which, by the way, belongs to you if you live in Connecticut or New York. Belongs to you. We own it, the people, not the ships or the energy producers. We, the taxpayers, own the bed of the Sound. And so why not protect it? Under federal law, there is a process to designate these areas, much as there is wilderness areas or national parks, national monuments, a marine protected area under the National Marine Sanctuaries Act. It requires a process. You know, anything good requires due process. And this one can be lengthy. It took 20 to 30 years for the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary and Underwater Preserve to be designated, but it was a first, and hopefully a lot of the lessons learned in that process would help to inform what we could do in Connecticut. What are the advantages? Well, first of all, you know, as Joe MacDougald and Dean Paul said, doing the right thing, whether it's in healthcare or many other areas, often is also cost effective. You can save money by stopping smoking, by preventing longer term disease. You can save money by enabling women to have preventive health care. And you can save money by helping to preserve the Sound against the kinds of infringements that we've seen. Why not use, under this Marine Sanctuaries Act, the existing routes for pipelines? There are already pipelines under the Sound. If others want to be built, they have to follow those routes. no new routes. Same with cables, which, by the way, NU, Northeast Utilities, and CLMP did with regard to an existing cable to improve it, to refurbish it, and expand its capacity. No new infringements on Long Island Sound, which would be one of the benefits, but also would help to save the recreational industry, fishing, navigation, which are a profoundly lucrative and economically beneficial part of the Long Island Sound story. It would also help with preservation. You know, we've spent billions, literally billions, on upgrading, cleaning up the Sound. We have made progress. There's no question that the Sound is cleaner now than it has been in parts of our history, but we still have work to do, and Save the Sound, which does terrific work, and I know is represented here today, has given grades. I think that since we are in an academic setting, I would be remiss if I didn't show the latest report card. The state of the Sound is a C+. Not good. We're doing well in some areas. Coastal habitat is an A. Migratory habitat is an A-. We're doing passively on beach litter, B-, but the rest are C's and D's. And we need to do better. Long Island Sound is a treasure. We have lots of environmental treasures in the state of Connecticut throughout the Northeast. And once we lose them, we may lose them forever, but certainly we will lose them to a generation because it takes years to restore them and it takes money. So if we're worried about fiscal responsibility, and I am, you know, we got to reduce the debt and the deficit, make smart cuts in the budget. If we're worried about the debt and we're worried about financial impacts and investment in Long Island Sound, in recognizing that it is a treasure, is a very, very smart investment, particularly when it uses existing law. We don't have to move anything through a divided and sometimes dysfunctional Congress. It is something that an administration can do, or at least begin to do, by setting in motion a process that will help to preserve the Sound as truly a sanctuary, which it should be regarded as being. A sanctuary for people to play, fish, use for commercial purposes in a restrained way, and preserve for future generations. So I thank you for the great work that all of you are doing in your communities, and I hope that you'll join me in this effort to preserve and enhance Long Island Sound. Thank you very, very much. Questions?
Hello. All right. Good afternoon, Senator. My name is Brian Bedoli. I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Bridgeport Regional Council, and we are the federally designated transportation planning agency for the Bridgeport region. And given the fact that we're talking a lot about the coastal communities in our state, and the fact that there's a lot of important transportation infrastructure that transcends through those communities, my question to you is really, in what ways do you think this sort of topic or this discussion is going to get integrated into the current discussions for transportation reauthorization and upcoming bills to extend that funding?
A very timely question. Anybody who hasn't been following the work of the Congress lately may not know that we're actually considering right now the transportation reauthorization, very important, in terms of providing investments, again, investments that are vital to good environmental stewardship in the Sound, but also throughout Connecticut. And I'm hoping that mass transit will be a part of that investment. Rail for Connecticut and the Northeast is absolutely essential. Again, it will help with transporting goods and services as well as people more affordably and environmentally. I think that the emphasis hopefully will be on including rail, mass transit, as well as improving our ports. As you know better than I, Bridgeport, London, and Haven really are a tremendous resource economically and environmentally in getting trucks off our roads and represent another way to surmount the congestion that exists on I-95 and the Merritt and other arteries.
You can also write your questions on pads if you like.
And I am going to have to leave shortly anyway, so thank you all for having me. And anyone who wants to catch me on the way out, be happy to talk to you. Thank you so much, and keep up the great work.